Welcome, everyone. We're excited you're here with us. We're going to be talking today about why am I stuck? And we're really, we think this issue is so important. I don't think Rick, you and I have ever found anyone who's completely unstuck in every area of their life. And getting unstuck in one area can really help give you momentum in others. I'm Kathy Martilli from IntimacyDojo.com and ThrivingNow.com, and I'm here with the amazing Rick Wilkes from ThrivingNow.com.
Thank you for that adjective. I believe that the information that we're sharing amazed me when I first let it really sink in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're inviting people to turn off your phones. You're choosing to be here. And by coming present, feeling yourself in your seat, and be open to, even if you've heard some of this information about what gets people stuck and things, to not view it just as an intellectual exercise.
Yeah, I think we numb
We
out
love,
sometimes and we've stopped letting in. I went back through some notes from like 10 years ago and I was like, wow, I'd forgotten about that's right. That was really powerful. Like we forget, we get used to it and think, oh, I know that already.
and we'd love to hear your ahas and things in the chat window if you're here and something comes to you. Also,
Yeah.
there's a place to ask questions. If you have difficulty hearing us or seeing us, there's a little link that says get audio and video help, and you can switch on it compatibility mode. Just a little housekeeping. So, Kathy, would you like to get us started? Why am I stuck?
Ah, it's a tough thing. Um, all too often people are just, they have dreams, they have goals, they're smart people, and they have all this stuff set up. Like New Year's, I have a lot of clients that are like, no, I'm going to do these things, and I do it myself, and I have these things I want to do, and I know how to do them. I know why I want to do them. I know all the steps. I have it broken down into baby steps, and we run into walls. We find that inner resistance just really holding us back. And it's so frustrating when you're like, I'm a smart person. This matters to me. Why am I not doing it? And I know for a long time, until I understood this better, it really undermined my confidence in myself. I started feeling like there was something wrong with me, that I couldn't move ahead with something that was so core to who I was and what I wanted to create in the world. So even the best laid plans, all the knowledge, all the skills, people find themselves not taking action, or they can actually end up sabotaging themselves. So if someone's decided for New Year's, I'm going to eat better, and as they're planning it, they're eating a McDonald's cheeseburger. Like there's like that sabotage, what am I doing that's getting in my way? Um, and so we're going to be talking about why they stay stuck, what they can do, and some things to move forward.
Great. So, first of all, it's not a lack of willpower. A lot of people think that. It would be like saying, oh, it's a lack of horsepower when your car has, well, to give you an idea, there was a jet plane and it was trying to taxi, and they were revving the engines up and it wasn't going anywhere. So much horsepower started getting behind going forward, but it wasn't going anywhere. Do you know why it wasn't going anywhere? Because there were two rubber chocks in front of the
Oh no!
wheels.
Yeah, that's bad.
And
That's how it feels.
yeah, and it feels like, what do and you start vibrating and you start getting all, most of us were taught to muscle through, to feel the resistance and push it, grit our teeth and push it. If you've ever seen a car driving with its emergency brake on, it is such an unpretty sight. And it's
Yeah.
sort of scary if you have enough oomph. And this is something I want to be clear about. We tend to attract clients who have a lot of emotional oomph, like jet engines have a lot of oomph. And one of the things that we see is that you learn how to back off and back off and back off rather than push through. So if your pattern is that you can't push through anymore, great, welcome. The just
Yeah.
get her done attitude is not what we're about here. It
Well, I
works
think the problem,
occasionally.
yeah, that's the problem. It sometimes works. It works just often enough that we like, if I just push through harder, like, and then we rev the engine so hard it hurts. It's like not good for us.
Absolutely. Um, any other points you want to make on that slide?
Um, Well, I think like one thing I've noticed when I really push that hard, I might succeed for a little while, but it boomerangs back and I'll end up further back sometimes, or I just give up in exhaustion and I start deciding that that thing was never destined for me. And I
Hmm.
love that, just looking at the people that are here, we have someone from Sweden, some from Wales, all over the country, in the US too. Like, this is not a problem that's isolated to one group of people. It's people all over the world that end up with this kind of a problem. So, there's a question, should we give up?
And I think that the boomerang aspect of it, just to like yo-yo dieting, that's what
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about. Starting a business, building it up, and then having it go away, and building up a business, and then having it go away. Have
Yeah.
relationships that get to a certain place, and then
And then
you
you
are
don't show
running
up.
from it, or they run
Yeah.
from you. These types of things are the kind of boomerang we're talking about. And
Yeah.
that question of should I give up? I believe in the intelligence of ourselves. It At some point the jet engines needed to be revved down, and somebody needed to look at the situation with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
But that's not the same as giving up on taking off and getting to your destination.
Yeah.
It can be something that is in the environment, in your emotional world, that is acting like chocks on the airplane wheels. And there is an issue of approach. I mean, more horsepower doesn't necessarily get you there. And yet,
Mm-hmm.
that's, as Kathy had mentioned, that's what we're told.
Yeah. I think that the most important one, this was a huge aha for me, and we're going to go in more detail on this as we go forward. But realizing that you've actually been fighting a part of you that is convinced that letting you move forward is dangerous. And that part of you has first dibs on all your resources. So fighting that part of you is really an uphill battle in mud. It's
Mm,
just going to be really hard to move forward.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and on it, I really think the amount of struggle you're experiencing in some ways is evidence of how strong you are and how much untapped potential you have. Because that plane, like you said with the chalks, it was really struggling to go forward, and it had some blocks. But as soon as you took, there's a lot of power there. As soon as the chalks are removed, it could move forward really well. There's a lot of power to move there.
And like the chocks on the airplane, many times these blocks are not something that you consciously put there. They're
Yeah.
things that were put there to stop certain things back when. Like, you don't want the airplane blowing down the runway with no one in it. And so the
Passenger
chocks are
yeah.
really useful. Just like the emergency brake when you're on a steep hill can keep you from just sliding down when you're not even driving. So,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks. So what's stopping people, Kathy? What's at work here?
I think there's a root cause that's common to all of this. It doesn't matter whether you want a healthier body, more love in your life, better finances, a better career, whatever it is, there's a common root cause. And it's not there to hurt you. It never was there to hurt you, even though you might be really angry and frustrated at it. That part of you is really desperately trying to help you. The problem is the harder you push forward, the harder it shoves back. Just like if you had a 3-year-old who really wanted to run in traffic, you'd be like, no, you're like, I am not going to let you go. And the harder you push, the harder I'm going to hold you back. It's really that kind of love, that survival, like, no. Um, and then after a while, it's easy to think there's something wrong with you, or those dreams are just never, I wasn't destined to have love because I've tried everything and I've worked so hard and it just
Mhm.
never works out for me. And it's really sad for people for me to, when people give up on stuff like that, because it's often there's just chalks in the way. There's just the brakes are on, and we're going to show you how to get rid of those brakes.
So we'd like to introduce you to the primitive brain. For those of you that have been with us, you may have heard us talk about this part of us in the past. We invite you to look at this fresh in your life. This is a new day. And when I look at my life through the eyes of, is there a part of me that is so focused on survival in a loving and insistent way that it might be interfering and keeping me stuck? That that always seems to apply in some way in my life. And so let's look at it fresh. The primitive brain has several names. Some people call it the monkey mind, lizard brain, survival brain. Kathy, you want to walk us through this a little bit more?
The way we define the primitive brain, it's composed of the oldest part of our brains. So you can go from the reptile part of our brain, the brain stem, which is really integrated into our body in many ways with nerve endings,
Mm-hmm.
up into what we call the monkey mind, not the cognitive part of our brain. We'll show you a picture in just a minute. We call it the primitive brain because it's so old and it's very instinctual. It's not the smartest part of our brain, but it's incredibly powerful. And it can control us. And I know, Rick, you don't like this analogy, but if you put your hand on a hot stove, your your primitive brain is not your brain is not going to go, huh, this is kind of hot, I should move my hand. At that point, you've already got third-degree burns. Your primitive brain reacts, and we
Yes.
can fight the primitive brain. So if it was really, really important for you to keep your hand on that hot stove, if someone was like, threatening someone you love and you have to keep your hand on the hot stove, you could use willpower and force yourself to do it for a certain amount of time, but it would take incredible amount of effort to fight that primitive brain that's trying to keep you safe, trying to react to danger, and immediately, before your cognitive brain gets involved at all, just take you out of the danger situation.
Yep.
And we have a picture of the areas of that for visual people. You can see that the new brain, the more involved brain up here on the top. It's a cognitive brain, and there's a lot of different parts in there. And in the older brain, the hippocampus, the amygdala, the reticular activating system. For me, I think it's great to know those things, but it's not really important for what we need to do. We're just letting you know that this older survival part of your brain that evolved over hundreds of thousands of years is there, and it's very powerful. And normally it talks to the new brain, and there's some communication, and we'll go in there. And there's certain situations when it gets frozen where that old brain just holds on to stuff, and it's left with whatever resources it has.
I'd
So
like to also say that in our model of the primitive brain, it extends throughout your body. As Kathy said, there's a reflex arc from your fingertips through your spine that gets it to, if you touch something really hot or really sharp, it actually reacts before what's in your cranium has a chance to even know that something has happened.
yeah,
In the same way that our heart um, perceives threats, that hair that rises up the back of your neck when there's something that's not quite right in the environment. Those are all part of what I would call the primitive brain.
mm-hmm.
And just like there's a higher intelligence in the heart, there's also the very quick, your heart starts racing to get you out of there before you've even perceived it with your eyes something necessarily, or the hearing or the smell hits you, and your whole being is picking up on that as well. So when we think of the brain, let's not just think about the cranium and these structures. Um, Feel for your whole being involved in this process.
Yeah, definitely. So our primitive brain powers, it like we said before, it has first dibs on our resources. So if we see a snake, we're not going to sit there and go, oh, that is a snake-like shape, and snakes are sometimes
Slithering.
dangerous. Yeah, we don't sit there and look at it. We react. We jump and scream. Well, I jump and scream and run away. Um, um, so if in dangerous situations, whether it's real danger or not, perceived danger, the primitive brain takes over control and it directs all the actions.
Mm-hmm. It's very hard to fight the primitive brain. Like we said, it's like it has decided certain options. It only has a few options. One of them is I'm safe, and then it lets the cognitive brain have full run. If it's perceiving that there's a lack of safety, then it stays with at least its hands on the reins, if that makes sense for people that have ridden a horse. It stays where it can pull back or kick you forward or to get you to run or to stop and freeze. It keeps that kind of control over us. And this is inborn. This part of
Hardwired.
us develops. Yes, it's hardwired. So it's not something that you're going to get rid of, like like you might get rid of a rock in your shoe. It's something that's going to be with you, and
But we can
none of
teach
us
it,
will
we
be
can
alive.
upgrade it. Yeah, we can
Exactly.
upgrade the software. So when the primitive brain sees danger, whatever it perceives is identified as danger, its first choice is to run away, because if you run away, there's less chance of you being hurt. You can get away from the issue, from the snake or the bully or whatever it is, and just
Turn,
go back to
yeah.
berry picking.
Turn tail and run away. Live to pick another day.
Yes. Yeah. The second choice is to fight. Your bully, pick on that bully, hit the snake with a stick, whatever it is, like fight back and retaliate. And if you can't do either of those first two things, you'll often freeze. And we're going to go much more in
Right.
depth on the freeze, because that's really where we get stuck.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay. So why we can't move forward? Our brains and our beliefs are profoundly influenced by what happened to us before the age of 5. They say that 80% of the belief systems are set by the time we're 5. Now that was one of the studies they did before they understood about brain plasticity. The good thing is we can change those beliefs, but if we don't do anything to change them, well, by the time we were 5, our personality was pretty much set. So before we're out in the world, we're like 3, 4, 5, 2, whatever, going around the world going, I don't really understand a lot. I don't have a lot of experience. And my brain is deciding what's dangerous and what's not, partly based on the reactions of people around me, partly based on my own experience. And then we're stuck for the rest of our lives running based on these decisions that a small child made. And one of the things we're going to talk about, things that are overwhelming to a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old kid. A lot of things are overwhelming. If you ask a 5-year-old to get in the car, drive to the grocery store, and buy groceries, they're going to be like, okay. It's overwhelming. And the thing is, we can code that in our brain. Sometimes it can be stuck as, this is a big deal. This is more than I can handle.
Right.
And more than I can handle is a danger to the primitive brain. Did you want to?
That's worth amplifying. More than I can handle is a threat to the primitive brain. Even more than I can handle of something that I really want, I've been preparing for, and it's more than what I want. And that can go for love, it can go for success, it can go for so many things.
Yeah. And if a lot of parents were broken, and so if you're trying to learn about love from your parents, and you realize that love is a big burden, and you've got to guess things, and you've got to take too much responsibility for a 3 or 4-year-old kid. Love can be encoded in our primitive brain as a scary thing to be avoided, even if our cognitive brain is like, yes, we want this. The primitive brain has more power.
Exactly.
So we come to the freeze response.
So I had always heard it as the fight or flight response. When I was studying athletics, it was the fight or flight response. And yet, even in athletics, we see people freeze, or they just don't come through at a particular moment. The freeze response is something where fleeing is not perceived as possible, and fighting is not perceived as a good option. If you're 5 years old and someone is screaming at you and they are 6 feet and 270 pounds of bone and muscle, fighting back, even to protect your self-image, may be like, that is not a good idea.
Well, that's been trained out of us anyway. They don't encourage you to run away from your parents or kick your teacher in the shin.
They'll bring you back. What?
Yes.
And so we're not taught to run away, and that leaves freezing as the only option. And it's a form of coping. It's like, okay, I'm going to let this play out. I'm going to not draw too much, and I'm going to try to figure out how to cope in place.
Just like the rabbit that freezes in the bushes because there's a wolf right nearby. It may work. The wolf may not, like, I thought there was something here and I'm not seeing it now. So it works sometimes. The problem is with humans,
Yeah.
We don't always let the freeze response release. So
What do
trauma
you mean by that?
occurs. Okay, so well, what happens is, most or all animals, and humans included, our systems are geared to release that freeze mechanism. So normally, if there's a freeze afterwards, once the wolf has gone away, the rabbit will twitch or run away or hop and kind of make some noises.
Run
I
back to
don't
its
know.
burrow
Yeah,
and
yeah,
unwind.
yeah. And humans would normally cry or yell or kick or whatever. But it's shut down. We're taught to shut down that release mechanism. Big girls, big boys don't cry. I'll give you something to cry about, hold it together. So that freeze mechanism is never released, and then gets like whatever information that came to you is frozen in the primitive brain. The
Right.
primitive brain is still in that freeze response, and it hasn't released it enough to move forward. Um, yeah, and so we're going back just to make sure we all understand the definition of trauma. That occurs when either one big thing or one or several smaller things, whatever it is, it occurs to us as being beyond our perceived resources and skill level. David Segal talks about this a lot in the uh, Ruth Basinski's trauma series. Is really good, but he's talking to it doesn't have to be a car accident. It doesn't have to be like, and this is one of the things that leaves people stuck, because to our brains, it's like, that wasn't a big deal. I was just really overwhelmed. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we also don't remember that as a little kid or in that moment, we might not have had a lot of resources. We might have just been, oh my God, I'm just maxed. And to our primitive brain, that's like, wow, I am not surviving well. I can't handle what's coming at me. I'm going to freeze, and now it's stuck. And now the primitive brain can't communicate with the cognitive brain, and all the information is stuck in there.
And just to say, I want to be able to sing, for example, and I had my partner helping me walk through some exercises, and having to sing for another human being with some expectation of what's going to happen, I felt my freeze response kick in.
Yeah.
That's really old. It around singing and freezing, there's a certain pattern. And so it's not that I'm not safe. It's not that I actually safe in that circumstance, but there were times before where I wouldn't have been.
Yeah.
And so my body came up with a freeze response. So let's all take a moment and think about what's something that you want where you might notice that you lose your voice, literally or figuratively, or you have a small action that you could take. If you want to share kind of where you get frozen in the chat, that's welcome. And certainly a huge trauma can actually freeze our neurons in our brain, where we don't remember what happened, in the same way that there are prehistoric things that happen that were under ice or under, concretized lava, that until they're revealed again, we may not even see them. So thank you, Kay, for sharing that aspect of it. Kathy? I think you're muted, perhaps. I just toggled your mic back on. For some reason, I'm not hearing you. So we're just going to take a moment, and while Kathy figures out something on the microphone side, hopefully, yeah, I'm not, I'm not seeing her mic signal, but it's not muted. Just take a moment and just take a breath, and just by acknowledging that freeze is a part of what our biology was designed to do at certain times. Maybe that part of us has been exercised 1,000 times in the last year, or during our lifetime 100,000 times. You may not like at all freezing as a part of what happens to you. Good. I hear you now.
I don't know what happened with my AirPods decided they needed a break. One of the things I wanted to emphasize too, Rick, you were talking about the singing, which is a social, a lot of people are like, oh, that was social. That's not really a trauma. But our primitive brains are really wired to fit in socially. If our tribe decided we weren't worthwhile or we were embarrassment, we might be left. Or if we broke a leg, no one would bring us food. So that is a very deep trauma to the primitive brain, to be laughed at or to feel like we're not doing a good job in front of our tribe. So that's something to, like I've had people dismiss that. Oh, that was just a social embarrassment. No, to the primitive brain, that's a huge deal.
We're social creatures. Yeah. Kathy, while you bring the presentation back up, we were tuning to the fact that this freeze response is a part of us. You shared your desktop, I think, instead of just the window.
Thank you.
People hate freezing later. It's the kind of thing that if you freeze, it's even just the fact that you froze has a certain quality of trauma to it. I can't believe that I didn't scream no. I can't believe that I didn't scratch. Can't believe that I didn't tell my boss he was an asshole. When he was really being an asshole. I can't believe I didn't step in when those guys were bullying and stop it from happening. I can't believe those words. I can't believe I didn't. I want us to acknowledge that our primitive brain in that moment made a decision, and it wasn't going to free you up to do that. And whether in retrospect we're happy with that decision or not, what we're going to be inviting is our primitive brain to start looking and activating more resources, healing the freezes that might be in the same way that if you're carrying a 200-pound block of ice of all of these old frozen things, it's hard to dance. We're going to show you some ways that your primitive brain can start unfreezing that. And
All right. So I think that, when we get that freeze response, when we're really scared, our primitive brain is reactive. It's reacting to the scary thing that is happening. So as we said before, things that are overwhelming in the past are stuck as scary and to be avoided. And I had this one. My parents fought over money a lot when I was a kid. One of my earliest memories is hiding behind the couch with my sister crying while my parents screamed at each other. And I grew up thinking that it was money. My brain decided money was dangerous. And even when I went through grad school, all of a sudden I was earning 5 times more than I'd ever earned in my life. And it was like, it went through my hand. Like I couldn't keep money. Like it was the strangest thing. If I was really good and I kind of forced myself to put some in the bank, I'd get flat tires. My car would have to be worked on. My AC broke. It was just like, I was like, what's happening? How is it possible to ever store money? And I went through the process we're going to talk about, and all of a sudden it just became super easy. And it was amazing the difference when my primitive brain wasn't fighting that. Whatever it is that's blocking you might well be stored in your primitive brain as dangerous. Do you want to?
Go ahead.
Okay. What your brain, like just like if it was a room full of snakes, your primitive brain might have decided having money in the bank or having money in your home or in your wallet is the same as having a wallet full of snakes. So it's doing everything it can to get rid of the snakes. It's trying. It's like, come on, why do you keep getting more snakes?
Why do you keep doing this? Yeah.
It's probably very confused.
And just to say, if you're thinking because you don't have that issue around money, well, why would anyone be like that? Good, because that means that your cognitive brain has an attitude toward that particular situation, which is free of trauma. For those of us that might have had that, we can remember what it was like to try to move forward with the brakes locked or a drain open. If you've tried to fill a bathtub with the drain open, your primitive brain can act as a drain for your energy, for your enthusiasm, for any part of you. Yeah, and so it can weigh us down and it can drain us. It can be like, I'm so excited. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm just so exhausted. I'm so depressed. if you get excited and then get depressed right afterwards, you've got a drain, and the primitive brain knows how to do that. It's a form of
Yeah,
setting the brakes
absolutely.
on.
Just another example, if you
So
find yourself like,
go ahead.
just when you decided to take better care of your health, like New Year's, a lot of people are like, I'm going to work out and eat better. You might find yourself like, as you're plotting and planning how you're going to do this, you're eating foods that are unhealthy for you. And there's those chalks in front of the airplane. It's like there's something stopping it. Your primitive brain is like, oh, being fit is bad. There might, and it doesn't have to be logical. We'll talk a little bit more about this. It may have decided that being fit isn't safe. I remember my mom, the first time someone whistled at me when I was 13, she thought it was for her, and then she realized it wasn't her, that they were whistling at me, and it was like, I could see the shock on her face, and she was probably just surprised, but my brain was like, don't make mom mad. Oh my God, this could be really scary. So there was a lot of fear around that. Like, I can't compete with her. Or it might be that it might bring sexual attention that, maybe you're not ready to deal with, or aren't, you don't even know what to do with around it. So there's different reasons you might have blocks there holding you back from that thing.
That's right.
So this is I love this. This was really eye-opening for me because I'd worked with so many people with trauma, and I couldn't figure out why they would have weird associations with things that were dangerous. Like, just like things that were unrelated to the core trauma. Someone was yelling at them and they were upset, or something horrible happened, but they'd be like, oh, and I'm afraid I hear the ice cream truck, and I'm like, really, I get all tense and scared. The thing is, the primitive brain just pulls in all the inputs that are happening in a given traumatic moment. It will be like, if I use the analogy, a kid's learning how to ride her bike. She's outside on there, she's going along, she's feeling good, and she trips over a crack and falls and hurts herself. The primitive brain is going to pull in everything that happened. It's going to pick, oh, there was a crack there. I was riding really happy. I was feeling good about myself. There was someone mowing the yard. I could hear an ice cream truck in the background, maybe a dog barking. The primitive brain just absorbs all the signals because it's not smart enough to sort them out. And normally what would happen is, like, later after the trauma was over, the cognitive brain would go in and help kind of basically, oh, throw that one away. Oh, we should watch out for cracks in the sidewalk. And maybe we should pay attention to what we're doing. But if it's frozen and the primitive brain doesn't ever get to talk to the cognitive brain, everything gets stored. So this person might be, as an adult, 35-year-old sitting in the home and hears the ice cream truck and gets really tense and picks a fight with her boyfriend or her girlfriend or whatever. Or the neighbor's mowing the yard and they suddenly feel like they can't move forward or whatever they're working on. It's not
These associations, like Kathy said, sometimes they can make sense, but the volume gets turned up really high on them. And so, for example, someone who is riding a bike doesn't pay attention and goes down a set of stairs that they weren't expecting. It's good when you're riding the bike to be very sensitive to where you're going. But it could be that the volume gets turned up where they never get to relax and enjoy the bicycle again because that "we must pay attention" is screaming at them. It's hard to relax if that's the case. It can also be things where you might not even be aware of the association. Just to offer something, we've had clients where, like I had one, where a situation, a trauma happened after a really delicious steak dinner. And from that point forward, her body could not accept steak, red meat. It became an association that was actually in the biochemical gut level of no, this will lead to something horrible because it did that one frozen time. A smell, if certain smells are just so repulsive to you, that's different than I don't like the smell of that, versus
incapacitated.
You start having a reaction, like you feel your body going, blah, blah. That may be tied to something in the primitive brain because it's very smell and taste and situationally
Well, I know
associative.
you and I both
So,
have had clients that they were feeling really good about. They were feeling good about themselves, their body, or they just had a good day and they were enjoying life. And then something really bad happened, and then all of a sudden there's that fear of, if I'm feeling good, bad things are going to happen. So,
right,
that's also an association people can have.
absolutely.
So the primitive brain is very powerful and it's very determined, but it isn't very wise. The research says that it has the intelligence of a small dog, which is not who I want necessarily running my life and making choices for me. And that's why when it's not in that frozen pattern, it will communicate. The cognitive brain goes downstairs and like, oh no, you don't need this information. That's really important. Let's keep that. It helps it understand it, and it will update the beliefs. But unfortunately, a lot of us have a lot of frozen incidents where there's a lot of garbage. The primitive brain is really clogged up with clutter.
Yeah. So like the primitive brain, when it's working really well, let's say that you were about to do something really new, but you were going to go
Yeah.
skydiving. Now, if you think about going skydiving without any training, you would expect your primitive brain to go,
And the
whoa,
cognitive brain should be going, wait, no, bad idea.
Yeah, I know, but some people, they're just so enthusiastic. I said, look, it's just, all you have to do is pull a cord and float to the ground, but your primitive brain would say, a well-working primitive brain, from my standpoint, would put on the brakes there. It would also be like looking around. So if I'm going for a hike and it's going to be really cold, it would be aware of like my fingers getting cold early on and might turn up the volume and say, hey, are we well enough protected here to do this safely? And you'll feel there is a little bit of a, wait a second, what about? And that's what the primitive brain is really good about. It says, wait a second, what about cold or falling or threats? And if it's working well, your cognitive brain and your primitive brain are saying, yeah, we got this. Or, oh, well, why don't we grab a whistle? Or why don't we get some extra training? Or why don't we practice this a little bit more before we do it? But it won't be filled with that kind of like fighting reflex that you get when the primitive brain is not convinced that this is a good idea.
And when we get back to the social stuff too, like the social aspects, I think that's the one place where this can get, if our primitive brain is clogged up and it's not communicating well, when we want to reach out and initiate connection, we might not be able to speak. Our primitive brain is like, reaching out has never gone well, so let's be like, I'm freezing. And just, I've done this. I've gotten like someone I have I'm fangirling over, and I'm like, blah, blah. I have a PhD and I can't speak to them. It's like, it's so frustrating.
What's up with that? Yeah, primitive brain.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for protecting me from the nice people I want to talk to. But it really does. We've often learned, I mean, I didn't have a lot of social skills training when I was a child. We often just throw our kids out in the world and like, you should just go make friends. Bobby, why don't you have any friends? Go make friends. And it's like, I don't know how. We don't teach them how to do these things. And then that's really overwhelming. And the primitive brain is like, scary, not good at this. We should not do this ever again. Just like, skydiving. I'm not good at this. I should never do this again. But we are social creatures.
We hope that you're feeling and hearing our lack of harsh judgment toward this part of us. There's a real deep respect that comes from a long period really engaging with people's primitive brain, observing and coaxing and reprogramming our own. We've been doing this for long enough that there's a deep respect for this dynamic. We see it working and helping kids make it through even horrible situations. And we see it as adults helping in so many ways for us to prepare our resilience to be able to live, laugh, and love with confidence. So if you really have been judgmental, allow yourself to say, maybe there's been more intelligence going on. Maybe that small dog that yaps a lot, things actually may be picking up something that I felt like I needed to pay attention to.
Yeah, you definitely want the small dog to yap if there's a burglar in the house or there's a fire.
Could you talk about how the cognitive brain is reprogrammed and works with the primitive brain?
Yeah, and I could go into the hippocampus and the amygdala and like all the different parts of the primitive brain. But basically what happens is, if you imagine on a very simplistic but visual level, imagine that there's this cognitive person up top. It goes downstairs to the basement, and he's like, okay, you got this information. I see that you've linked money equals danger, because every time parents talk about money, there's lots of screaming and fighting. I'm going to upgrade that. I'm just going to re-encode that and reprogram that slightly. Lack of skills around money can equal danger. A lack of communication skills might be dangerous, but money itself is really cool, and we'd like more of that. And for the belief around being fit, it might be, being fit equals jealousy and danger. Oh, you've got that coded, like I get where you got that from, but hey, no, we're just mom was kind of insecure and I can be fit and loved, or I couldn't handle sexual advances as a 13-year-old, but I can probably do it now, or I can learn the skills to handle it. And it was like Bobby going out to make friends. It's like, making friends is impossible. I'm not good at it. Oh, let me re-encode that. The cognitive brain would say, it's actually just some skill sets we could learn. And maybe we're a little shyer or more awkward than some people, but it's possible for us to learn these skills. And it's not actually the reaching out that's scary. It's the lack of skills and practice that I have. Just like paragliding, parachuting, or you're talking about, if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to be really scary. And if you've done it 20 times, it's really easy.
Great.
So if we're thinking of the lines, the communication between the cognitive brain and the primitive brain being frozen, that communication, the cognitive brain can't go down to the basement, can't help upgrade that. So
and there are definitely methods and therapies, even just a warm person's heart as we share a story. We know that the brain goes, every time we share something, there's a period of neuroplasticity, which is a fancy way of saying that which was hard and frozen and concretized has some malleability, a little bit or a lot. Mm-hmm. And that in the right space, just sharing that can be deeply healing for a frozen trauma. Sometimes that's enough. And for other people like me, my frozen traumas weren't just here. They were everywhere in my body. They were tied into my sexuality and my genitals. They were tied into my knees. Even my ankles had frozen energy around taking steps forward. I had certain amounts of other feelings that had been frozen in other parts of me as well. And so just talking about it for me wasn't enough.
Yeah. Sometimes, like, if things are close to being, like, if they're only a little frozen, repeated exposures will help. Like, if you keep trying, you can break through that. But really what we've found, and Rick and I have both done, decades of work on this stuff. We use there's several somatic therapies, but we found one that we like the most, to relink to break the freeze response, so there's really clear communication, and actually to specifically invite the communication between the cognitive brain and the frozen parts and the primitive brain.
That's worth amplifying. What we're talking about is offering a body somatic, in your body, invitation to this natural process. You're tapping on, you're inviting the body to do this healthy thing, and that's one way to look at it.
Yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, there's millions of people have successfully used it and had really great responses, but it's still not as well known as a lot of like talk therapy might be, for example, in meditation. It's much faster and less painful and far more effective than talk therapy and any other technique Rick or I have tried. It's using emotional and energetic technology that was discovered 5,000 years ago in China. What we're doing is we're gently tapping on specific acupuncture points that are on different meridians. So they've found one for each meridian line that will allow you to, you can reach them easily and tap on those while you're cognitively tuning into what the feelings and beliefs are, so that it will trigger the primitive brain and the cognitive brain to talk and upgrade really quickly. And it reprograms that, just like we said with the dollars equal danger, and the cognitive brain goes in and reprograms it. It lets it reprogram really quickly and say, no, it's skills actually. Let's learn some skills, and then money is not dangerous at all. It's actually really amazing. Let's have more of it. And Rick and I have been doing this for, I guess you've been doing it for 12 years, 14 years?
No, longer than that now.
Oh.
I'm not sure. And if you lost your videos, you can try the Get Video Audio Help link and try compatibility mode or try refreshing.
Yeah,
sometimes that helps.
You. All right.
So one of the things that again, in that healthy primitive brain, it's like having a bodyguard with you, or a dear friend who is your co-pilot. You know, I flew for a while on my own, and I always loved having a skilled co-pilot, even if they weren't a pilot themselves, but someone who knew enough to look out for certain things. It was always really nice. It allowed me to feel like it was a co-creation. And we are always co-creating between our cognitive brain and our primitive brain. And so the part of you that has access to your adrenal system, to your muscles, it actually can activate you to do extraordinary acts of lifting and saving and running, and that if you get that part of you on your side, that it can make a big difference. So that's the turbocharged aspect of your energy when you have your primitive brain congruent with your action.
Well, I know that like you and Carol have done, and a number of people have talked about being authentically, like 100% aligned in wanting something. And I have never found anything besides tapping that can really get my body, my primitive brain, my cognitive brain, my gut, my heart, like, yes, I want this thing, to give me that kind of clarity. And, you know, the primitive part of our brain is the part of our brain that lets us lift a car. Like a mother will run out, you know, 100-pound mother will go out and lift a car off her child. That's amazingly powerful. I want that kind of help when I'm trying to go out there and write a new book or reach new people or meet someone new. I want myself to be all aligned, because it's when we're not fully aligned that we come off a little bit. People can tell there's something off, and it can appear a little creepy or a little bit awkward. And you know, while the other person may not understand the blocks we have, they just know something's not quite there. And it can really hinder the social aspects of all of this. Mm-hmm. So what we're doing is called emotional freedom techniques, or tapping. And the points are right here. I know a bunch of you already know about this, but not all of you do. And you may find that it's a good way, you know, we may have words that you like to help explain it to other people that haven't heard about it. You want to?
So these are natural comfort points. Look, the top of the head. If you've ever, oh my gosh, like some people, when they just want to calm down, they'll put their hand on the top of their head. If you get a shock of your life, your hand goes here to the collarbone points. They're right here. They're part of in the kidney meridian in Chinese medicine, which is connected to the adrenals. You don't need to know that. If you've ever like sat with your hands, you know, if you're like frustrated but you're not wanting to get into it, you can sometimes like set with your hands underneath your arms. The underarm point is about mid-bra line for a woman, about 4 inches below the armpit. So these are natural comfort points. Top of the head, eyebrow, the start of the eyebrow, you know, putting your hands over, people rub here, side of the eye. You know, they'll put their hands on the side of their head. They'll rub underneath their nose, under the eye, under the nose, the chin point. If you ever see someone just like rubbing their chin, these are natural comfort points. They're used in Chinese medicine, and they're also probably been used as long as humans have been around, because they're access points into our energy, our emotional energy system.
Yeah, and for those science geeks out there, they've done Harvard Medical and Ohio State Medical have done extensive FTIR studies where they show that doing the gentle tapping will help trigger the hippocampus, the amygdala, to communicate with the cognitive brain. So that the primitive part of the brain is literally communicating in a different way when we're tapping these points than it does otherwise. And that's exactly what we want to create. And
we do have a free manual at thrivingnow.com/tapping.
Yeah.
as well.
Do you want to just lead a quick tapping just so that anyone who's new to it can see?
Why don't you do that? I've got a little technical thing on my side,
Right.
and
so everyone take a nice slow deep breath. And we're going to start tapping on the karate chop point right here on the side. And I like Rick's analogy. You're going to tap about as hard as you would if you were tapping on a table, drumming your fingers. You tap about that hard. You don't want to hurt yourself, but you do want to feel it. And we're going to start with just repeat after in your silence. You're muted on here, so you won't interfere with the recording. But if there's someone around and you don't want them to hear it, you can say it in your head, and that's fine. So karate chop, even though I'm stuck.
Even though I'm stuck.
I'm really curious on how I can release this.
I'm really curious in how I can release this.
Even though I've been really mad at myself.
Even though I've been really mad at myself.
For not moving forward more quickly.
For not moving forward more quickly.
Maybe my primitive brain has just been protecting me.
Maybe my primitive brain has just been protecting me.
And I can start releasing that old programming.
And I can start releasing that old programming.
And let it help me move forward.
And let it help me move forward.
Even though I've been frustrated as heck.
Even though I've been frustrated as heck.
I'm ready to make a difference right now.
I'm ready to make a difference right now.
Maybe I can do that with all of me.
And maybe I can do that with all of me.
Top of the head, I've been so frustrated.
I've been so frustrated.
Eyebrow, I didn't know what was wrong.
I didn't know what was wrong.
Side of the eye, I didn't know why I wasn't moving forward.
I didn't know why I was moving forward.
Under the eye, I have some clues now.
I have more clues now.
Under the nose, and I can tap on them.
And I can tap on them.
Chin, I bet I can release this old programming.
I bet I can release this old programming.
Collarbone, and start moving forward.
And start moving forward.
Under the arm, I'm ready to create the life I've always wanted.
I'm ready to create the life I've always wanted.
Top of the head, in a lot easier way.
In a lot easier way.
Take another nice slow deep breath. And just notice how you feel as you go through that. A lot of people will feel more relaxed and curious and open. Just even tapping a couple rounds. Rick often recommends if you're at work, drink some extra water, and when you run into the restroom, just tap a little bit, and it will. You have a perfect excuse, and it can help start releasing these patterns. Even if you don't know what to say, you can tell, I don't know what to say, but I'm stuck. It's okay. So, you have anything you want to add there?
No, that sounds great. We have about 7 minutes left.
Yep. So we're going to go on to some tips and suggestions on this. But before we go forward, we always like to give people that want to go deeper an option information about that. So Rick and I, basically based on how stuck so many people were and how reactive so many primitive brains were, we created this program called Reprogram Your Primitive Brain, where we actually help you go through and understand this at a much deeper level with lots of tapping and guidance, guided visualizations, meditations, to help you really anchor and take your primitive brain from this reactive, kind of cluttered area with all this bad programming into a place that's super resilient and where it can release things really quickly, and it has really good programming. So we're really proud of this program. It's quite in depth, and we learned a lot even doing it. So we'd love to hear. If you're interested, you can go to thrivingnow.com/primitive-brain, and we'd love to know what you think if you decide to go ahead with that. So should we answer some questions about tapping so that people have that?
Sure. On everything? Well, I use it for anything that's an emotional disturbance for me. And I find that if nothing else, if it doesn't clear it, I feel more present. I can be more present. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes, let's face it, a lot of trauma, social trauma, is in relation to other people. And I have found that if it's not working for me and it's related to someone else or a belief that I've established about myself because of what other people thought of me and how they behaved toward me,
yeah,
wow, getting someone else to tap along with me, whether professionally or in a group or with a tapping buddy, has made such a difference because they can
Well,
often
it's a blind
reflect the
spot.
blind spots. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't always see them ourselves.
Kathy?
One of the things, yeah, one of the things we've noticed is it's the illogical beliefs that really get us stuck. So our primitive brain again was absorbing a lot of the danger signals when we were very little, and to a little kid, we sometimes make associations that aren't really there. So if we were eating chocolate and mom came through the door and was grumpy, we don't have the experience to say, "Oh, she's mad. I was eating chocolate. Eating chocolate is bad." It might be that she just had a bad day. But little kids don't have the ability, the experience to distinguish that. So, whenever someone says, this doesn't make any sense, Rick and I both lean forward and go, tell us.
Oh, good.
Because that's often, you can't think your way out of an illogical belief.
Yeah.
And tapping is a great way to clear that out. So those are some tips and tricks as you go forward. Rick has a program on pain relief with tapping too, because a lot of pain is emotionally based. So whatever you're noticing, it's worth trying it on. It's painless and quite easy once you get used to it a little bit. And we do have the tapping guide at thrivingnow.com/tapping.
Great. Is this the last?
That's the left side.
Great. So one of our participants here today, Lydia, shared a question, a situation where she wants to do something, but when she does it, people love her, and that terrifies her. And we can look at that and say, well, that's so illogical.
Yeah.
And here's the thing you can ask, well, what about it might make sense? So for example, what comes with people loving you? Maybe it's obligation. If they love me, then I have to do whatever they ask or whatever they tell me, or I'm bound to them in a way that is unhealthy for me. So we come to understand that with all the deep investigations that we've done into primitive brain kind of freezes, there's been an intelligence. Yes, it may be the intelligence of a 3-year-old or a small dog, but what if there's an intelligence behind this? And if that's what is alive, then what happens is, if you approach it as a friend, as someone who's saying, hey, well, what might have made sense back then when you made this decision? Or what comes with love? What comes with success? What comes with sex? What comes with you being out there and sharing your poem or your voice in song? What does your primitive brain think is going to come along with that? And it could be that the first reaction is, well, someone may laugh at me. If that's going to cause you to collapse, okay. Thank you, primitive brain, for stopping you from collapsing. But tapping can be used to strengthen your resiliency. So if someone laughs, maybe it's because you're funny. Maybe they laugh because, that hits their funny bone. And maybe they're a bully that has gotten used to laughing at people. And when you don't respond to that way, they might realize that, maybe that pattern in them isn't healthy either.
Yeah. No, that's really important. I think that we realize, I know when I'm really timid, sometimes bullies will be they'll put me down more, versus if I'm kind of like, I'm going to walk away, or I'm not reacting, they stop because they're not getting what they want out of the power dynamic. So just having the ability to comfort yourself and get out of the freeze of, oh my God, someone's criticizing me. The more we do this, resiliency is not never having reactions. Resiliency is your turnaround time. How quickly are you stepping out of that? And that's, I think, so powerful and so beautiful that we can do that.
Kathy and I are available at support@thrivingnow.com. And if there's some way that you're stuck, we would like to hear from you. We're sensing that this year is has a lot of potential for folks. People are tired of being stuck. Their artistry wants to come forward. They want to express themselves. They want to make a difference in the world. They want to be intimate with themselves and their own body image, and they want to be able to co-create exceptionally beautiful experiences with others as well. The primitive brain is involved in every single one of those dances. If you'd like to share it with us, it will infuse our work over the coming months as well.
Yeah. And we have a call tomorrow on body image and building better body confidence. So if that's something that you've ever been curious about, we'd love to have you there. We'll weave a lot of this, like how the primitive brain may be blocking you from having the confidence and the body acceptance that you might like to have.
Right. And if you're watching a replay of this, we'll have the link. I'm going to go ahead and paste the link for that over in our chat window live. And also we'll be putting pointers to that. Body image is something that is so both social and primal. And we're excited to be engaging around that tomorrow. Thank you for your questions. They helped inform our work today. Kathy, anything else you want to add right now?
I hope that you can use this to make 2018 the most fulfilling, amazing, warm, and loving year yet, because we all deserve to have that. So thank you all for being here.
Bye.
Link to the program.